Hello and welcome back to Local Predictions. As I can tell by the title, this video is about the final polling video that I will do on the 2024 presidential election, and that is the polls of the 2024 presidential election. 1 day away from the election. We are 1 day from November 5th. It is November 4th, the day that I'm filming this. Well, it's after midnight on November 3rd, technically, but it is November 4th. Yes, my sleep schedule is horrible. But we are 1 day away from the election when you guys are seeing this. We are 24 hours away. We are that close. I can't believe we are finally here. I've been making videos for 6 months, and yeah, we're finally here. We're finally here. So yeah, 1 day away. Kamala Harris is up by 1.0% according to the polls. This is the final polling video I will do on 2024. And yeah, before we jump into it, I'm going to ask you all to please like and subscribe to the video. We're trying to get to, I don't even know at this point, we're just trying to get to more subscribers. We're trying to get more subscribers and more likes on this video. It really helps out the channel. And yeah, so let's jump right into it. We're going to do every single state. In Alabama, we have not had any polls. We're starting out with kind of a bust here. We don't have any polls with Kamala Harris. However, we're going to go off of the Biden-Trump polls way back from, stretching as far back to August of 2023. So, although obviously this state is not very important, if there haven't been polls in a year, that means this state is very unimportant. Trump is going to win here by a safe margin. Moving on to Alaska. In Alaska, we actually do have quite a few polls here. With Biden in the race, this race was not close at all. It was Trump plus 23%. The polls currently, all of them say it's a likely margin, which is less than 50%, between 5 and 15%. And most of these polls actually show a single-digit margin. Nearly every single poll says that Kamala Harris will gain on Biden's margin in 2020, which is Trump plus 10.1. Actually, every single poll says that. And there's even been a poll that shows Trump up by 5. This race could be very interesting. It could be a sleeper competitive race. However, right now we are looking at a likely margin for Donald Trump, which is pretty expected in Alaska. In Arizona, our first swing state, this race switched quite a bit back and forth back in August and September. In fact, Kamala Harris led here by 1.4 in late August during her honeymoon period. However, since then, Donald Trump has taken a pretty substantial lead. He is currently up by 2.5%. This is the widest margin of any of the swing states. This is a lean Trump margin. Keep in mind, Biden won here by 0.3% in 2020. This is a flip. Our first flip for Donald Trump. He is now leading 23-0. Moving on in Arkansas, we only have one poll here. Trump is up by 15. That is a safe margin. Really no surprise there. I actually think it'll be a bit wider of a margin than 15% for Trump. In California, currently Kamala Harris is up by 23.9%, a safe margin. That is actually a 6% swing to the right here, which is pretty surprising, especially because Kamala Harris is from San Francisco. She is from California, so it's a shift to the right, even when it is her home state. Moving on in Colorado, right now Kamala Harris is up by 11.1%, a likely margin. That is actually a shift to the right again, a 2% shift to the right, despite Colorado shifting 9 points from 2016 to 2020, as we can see, from 4 to 13%. And it will now saying that it will switch a little bit back to the right, shifting 2% to the right. In Connecticut, we have one poll here. Kamala Harris up by 16. No surprise there. Connecticut is a very liberal state. In Delaware, right now we have two polls. Kamala Harris up by 17 and 20. Again, pretty obvious. She is up by a safe margin. In District of Columbia, in Washington, D.C., we actually have no polls. However, I mean, this race went to Joe Biden by what? 86.8%. Yeah, this race is going to be pretty solid for Kamala Harris. Really no surprise there. In Florida right now, it actually was a little bit close back in early October. Since then, has been a very, very consistent growth for Donald Trump. This is very healthy growth, very consistent. Trump is up by 6.9% right now, nearly a 7-point margin. Keep in mind, this was the race that went to Obama in 2012, that went to Obama in 2008 by a pretty solid margin. And now, I mean, look at it. It shifted right from 2016 to 2020. It was one of only a handful of states to do so, and now it's saying it'll shift another 4 states to the right. This state has really lost its swing state status. It is now an R+7 state. I mean, it voted for Marco Rubio by 16.4% in 2022. It then voted for Ron DeSantis by 19.4% in 2022. This race has really lost its swing state status as a really far-right shifting state. And this race could be an R+8 state. However, we're looking at R+7 according to the polls. In Georgia, another very close swing state. This is one of the 7 key battlegrounds, which is Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona. Georgia is currently Trump plus 1.5. This is a lean margin. And yeah, Trump is up by 1.5. This is actually our second flip. Georgia went to Biden by 0.24%. However, right now it is looking pretty likely that Trump will flip it. That Seltzer poll really could change, really does change everything up. However, right now the polls say Trump is up by 1.5%, which is pretty expected for Georgia. In Hawaii, we don't have any polls with Joe Biden in it or with Kamala Harris. We only have polls with Joe Biden. However, we can assume that the state is going to be safe because it did go to Joe Biden by 29.5%. In Idaho, we have only one poll here from when Biden was in the race. This is a year ago. However, again, we can assume Idaho is going to be safe. It's a very unimportant state. It's going to go to Trump. In Illinois, we have we have three polls here: Harris plus 17, 18, and 16. All of them safe margins. All of them pretty accurate. Moving on to Indiana, in this race, right now Trump is up by 17%. I think it'll be a little bit closer. I think it'll probably be Trump plus 13 or something, which is actually a likely margin. However, the polls say Trump is up by 17% right now. Now, in Iowa, this is the crazy one. We have the Seltzer and Co poll that I was talking about during the Georgia part. Harris up by 3. Harris up by 3 in Iowa. Yes, you heard that correctly. The state that Trump won by 8% in 2020, the state that Trump won by 9.5% in 2016. This state, according to this poll, is Harris plus 3. And you might be thinking, well, that's just an outlier. That's really not too important. That's just a crazy pollster, probably radical left pollster. However, no, this is Seltzer and Co. This is the most accurate pollster in the country. That's not an exaggeration. This is the gold standard of polling. They got Iowa right in 2020. I mean, if we look at the 2020 margin, everyone was saying it was going to be neck and neck just literally on Halloween, or not Halloween, October 30th, the day before Halloween. 4 days before the election, Joe Biden led in the polling average in Iowa, a state that he would lose by 8. Joe Biden led here. I mean, the polling average was horrible. But look at Ann Seltzer. Trump plus 7. Look at all the rest of the polls. Neck and neck. Ann Seltzer, Trump plus 7. No one else was predicting this. I mean, this pollster is just an amazing pollster. They got it exactly right in 2020. The only poll that I could find that had Trump up by 7, that's as close as Ann Seltzer was back in August, and that was a Republican-sponsored poll. That is the only poll that had Donald Trump up by the same amount that Ann Seltzer did. And they did the exact same thing in 2016. They projected Trump would win by plus 7. He wound up winning by 9. He was the only pollster that had that. The only pollster, and Seltzer was the only one. And if we look at we can look at anything. We can look at the Senate polls. We can look at the Republican Iowa caucus. They were the only ones that got it right there. Let's look at that. We can see this one they're actually off by a little bit. They got a little bit mixed up with Harris and DeSantis, but they were only off by about 2%. It was very, very close. Ann Seltzer is the gold standard of polling. And I know that's a big side tangent. However, they really are. So this really changes everything up. When this dropped yesterday, everything changed. The entire race changed. My prediction went completely out the window, and we really have to start over from scratch because this poll is shocking. Harris plus 3. However, that is besides the point. If we average out all these polls, I do think that Iowa is very narrowly lean, which is just under 5% for Trump. However, this poll really stands above the rest. This poll is extremely, extremely accurate, scarily accurate. And look at, Harris plus 3 is absolutely insane. And really no one knows what to think about this. I made an entire video about it. You should go watch that. But yeah, that is a long enough side tangent. That poll is just absolutely ludicrous. We have no idea what to think about that. But yeah, our next state is Kansas. We're going to move on from Iowa. And Kansas, oh my God, Trump plus 5. That's a poll. I did not know that existed. But yeah, Trump plus 5, that's not going to happen. But the polls here actually see Trump up by 11 and 5, which is a likely margin. That Trump plus 5 poll is definitely off. Trump's not going to win here by 5. He's probably going to win here by about 15. But the polls say that Kansas is going to be likely. I think they're a little bit off on that one. In Kentucky, again, no polls for Kamala Harris, so we're going to assume it's going to be safe. It went to Trump by 26%, similar to Alabama and Idaho, which also have no polls. In Louisiana, we have 2 polls. Again, no Joe Biden, so we are going to assume that this state, or no Kamala Harris, it's only Joe Biden polls. We are going to assume that the state is safe because it was safe in 2020, it went to Trump by 19%. In Maine's first, we have a few polls here. Kamala Harris up by about 25% in all of them. Pretty expected there. In Maine's second, this one is a little bit closer. We did have a pretty surprising poll here from another pretty accurate pollster, nowhere near as accurate as Ann Seltzer, nowhere near as accurate as her, but still Pretty accurate, and it showed Kamala Harris up by 5. That was very shocking, but that was back in August. That was a while ago. I also made a video on that, but that's a very outdated video. And most polls now show Kamala Harris down by about 5%. Right now, I think the polls average out to a lean margin, which I think will probably be a likely margin for Donald Trump. But the polls say it will be lean for Donald Trump, however, the same result nonetheless. In Maine at large, actually, we have Kamala Harris up by 11, up by 8. 7. So yeah, it's going to be a likely margin for Kamala Harris. That's really to be expected. Moving on to Maryland and Massachusetts, we can kind of do these ones together. Both of them, Kamala Harris up by in the high 20s. Joe Biden actually won here in the low 30s. Both of them. So these two very solid liberal states, the second and third most liberal states in the country, only behind Vermont. I'm sorry, my voice keeps cracking. Kamala Harris, this is our next swing state, the closest swing state, or one of the closest swing states. Kamala Harris up by 0.8%, a tilt margin. Very, very narrow, very neck and neck race here. Kamala Harris up by 0.8%. Very, very close. So yeah, Kamala Harris up by 0.8. That is neck and neck. This race is going to be very important in 2024. I actually agree with this. I think that she will win here by a little more than 0.8%, probably by about 1.5. But yeah, that's my opinion. In Minnesota, Kamala Harris leads by 5.6%, a likely margin just over that. Keep in mind, Kamala Harris selected Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, as her running mate, so that definitely gives Kamala Harris a boost there. In Mississippi, no polls again. I'm going to have it as safe for Donald Trump, of course, because Donald Trump won here by 16.5%. This race is not going to be very close. Missouri, Donald Trump is only leading here by 14%, which is a likely margin, which is pretty interesting, considering that Trump actually won the state by more than 15%, a safe margin. However, the polls say it'll be 14%. I disagree. Well, Missouri is going to be right on the fence. It's going to be right in between 50%. I could see it going either way. But yeah, the polls say it'll go to Trump by 14%, so that is what we're going to fill in as. In Montana, Trump's up by 18.4%. No surprise here. He led by 16.4% in 2020. In Nebraska, the polls say Trump up by 16. Again, no real surprise there. I don't know where Nebraska's second is. For some reason, it doesn't show the district. But if we look at Nebraska's second, it really isn't. That's weird. There's no Nebraska second polls. However, I'm just going to have you guys trust me. Nebraska second. The polls say that is Kamala Harris by a likely margin. Most polls say about Kamala Harris up by 7 or 8. Sorry it doesn't show that. I don't know why it doesn't, but you guys can just trust me on that. Moving on to Nevada, another very neck and neck swing state. I mean, look at this race, very close, neck and neck, back and forth and back and forth, very close. Trump currently up by 0.9, a tilt margin. Early voting has looked very good for Republicans, so the polls are kind of going off of that. However, polling has actually been a little bit biased towards Republicans in Nevada, which is interesting because normally polls are more biased towards Democrats. Nevada's kind of been the reverse. Nevada's going to be neck and neck, either going Democrat. The polls say Republican. However, this state could go either way. It's very, very close. In New Hampshire, we have currently Kamala Harris only up by 4.7%, which is a lean margin. That's actually pretty surprising. That is a close race, partially because Joe Biden won here by 7.4%. So Donald Trump is picking up 3 percentage points here, and also Donald Trump stopped campaigning here. He pulled everything out of New Hampshire, said it wasn't a swing state anymore, which it really isn't, but the polls say that it is one. The polls say that it'll be much closer than what most people are saying. The polls say it'll be Harris plus 4.7. And in New Jersey, when Biden was in the race, I mean, this just goes to show that Kamala Harris is a way better Democratic candidate for the American people voting than Joe Biden was, because, I mean, there was a poll here that showed Trump by 1 in New Jersey. Trump by 1 in New Jersey. That is absolutely insane. However, since then, Kamala Harris has really picked up her ground here. New Jersey is a very liberal state. The polls say it'll go by likely margin to Kamala Harris. Personally, I think it'll be safe, but the polls say it will be likely. In New Mexico, the polls say Kamala Harris is up by 6.5%. That's a likely margin. I agree with that. I think it'll be a little bit further to the left than that. However, 6.5% is pretty accurate in New Mexico. In New York, Kamala Harris is up by 16.5%, a safe margin. No surprise there in New York. Kamala Harris continues to inch closer to 270. It's 201 to 149. Moving on to North Carolina, this race has been very neck and neck as well. Back in September, it was very close. I mean, look at this. It was even on September 10th. And now Donald Trump is up by 1.6, a lean margin victory for Donald Trump. I think it'll be very, very close. I think a little bit closer than this. The polls say Trump up by 1.6, so that's what we're going to fill it in as. Moving on to North Dakota, we have two polls here. This one's a little bit interesting. Trump plus 10, but this is favored. This is sponsored by the Democratic senatorial candidate. So yeah, Trump by 27 is the one real poll here. It's going to be a safe margin for Donald Trump. It went to Trump by 33%. This race is not going to be close in the slightest. In Ohio, Trump is up by 8.1. This one's also not going to be too close, a likely margin. That Ann Selzer poll could definitely switch it around a little bit. It could be lean. It could be even closer than that. I think it's going to be likely. I think the Ann Selzer poll is off. That is my opinion. A lot of people think it's going to be accurate. I think it's off. So yeah, Ohio is likely. I think it's going to stay the same. Ohio, Trump plus 8.1. That would be, again, almost the exact same margin we saw in 2020 and the exact same margin we saw in 2016. So yeah, Ohio is going to be likely. In Oklahoma, Trump plus 35. No surprise there. And then in Oregon, Trump, oh, wow, that one's very surprising. Kamala Harris up by 5. But most polls say Kamala Harris is going to win by likely margin. Again, no real surprise in Oregon, other than this poll, which is very off. In Pennsylvania, we have another swing state, very neck and neck. Pennsylvania, Harris took the lead here in August and early September. Then she began to fall behind in late September, and by late October, we saw Donald Trump take the lead, and he has held that lead for quite some time here. Now about 2 weeks, he's up by 0.3. This is the closest swing state according to the polls. Trump is up by just 0.3. Very, very close. For reference, that is about as close as Arizona was in 2020 and about as close as Michigan was in 2016. This race is going to be very, very close. It is the fundamental swing state, the most important race this election. Very well could be the tipping point state for either candidate. Right now, the polls say Trump is up by 0.3. It'll be very close on election night. Very interesting to see who wins in Pennsylvania. Coming down to the final stretch here in Rhode Island, most polls say it's going to be a safe. That's right on the cusp of 15%. I'm going to say it's safe because I think it's going to be safe. And the polls, no, I'll make it likely because most of the recent polls say it's going to be likely. So yeah, I'm going to give it to likely Kamala Harris. I think it's probably going to be safe. These polls are right on the cusp of safe and likely. But either way, pretty solid Kamala Harris state. I mean, if it's Kamala plus 14 or Kamala plus 16, really not going to make too much of a difference, especially in Rhode Island. Next up, we have South Carolina. This margin will be pretty interesting. Trump up by 12.3%. That is going to be a likely margin. We saw Trump win here by 11.7. I think that Trump's probably going to win here by about 12%. So pretty accurate here in South Carolina, in my opinion. In South Dakota, Trump up by 25. Really no surprise there. In Tennessee, we see Trump up by about 25 again. Again, no really surprise. And then in Texas, this one's going to be very important. Texas, Trump up by 7.7%, a likely margin, a pickup for Trump. He's picking up his margin here. Trump won here by 5.6. Texas is an electoral juggernaut. It is 40 electoral votes, the second most out of any state in the nation. And that actually hands Donald Trump the victory. We can see here it was very close. Then Texas, because of how many electoral votes Texas has, is the second largest state in the union, according to population and land area. Trump does win the election here, 274. These races are yet to be filled in. However, because of Texas's victory and Donald Trump's victory in Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, according to the polls, we see Donald Trump win the election. So far, 274, although he will expand on that later. Moving on to Utah, another pretty conservative state, Trump plus 22. Again, no real surprise there. In Vermont, Harris plus about 35. Again, no surprise. This is the most liberal state in the union. In Virginia, Harris plus 6.2. This is actually a pretty big swing to the right because, I mean, look, Biden won here by 10.1% in 2020. This is a 4% swing to the right. Pretty big swing to the right. Trump invested a lot of money in here, especially when Biden was in the race. A lot of people thought he was going to win it. In fact, when Joe Biden was in the race after the debate, I said Trump would win Virginia. And now that effect is really paying off when Kamala Harris is in the race. I mean, that money just doesn't go away. There's still a lot of money invested in Virginia. A lot of minds were changed in Donald Trump's favor in Virginia, and we're probably going to see a little bit of a gain for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris currently leads by 6.2 in the polls, and I agree with this. So now moving on to Washington, we see Kamala Harris up by 19. Again, no surprise. And then in West Virginia, Trump up by 27. Again, no surprise there. I think it'll actually be Trump plus about 40 because, I mean, we saw Trump plus 39 in 2020. We saw Trump plus 40 and 42 in 2016. This is a very conservative state. and then we'll skip over Wisconsin for a little bit. We'll do Wyoming, the most conservative state in the union. Trump up by 43. We're going to save Wisconsin for last because it is very, very close. And in Wisconsin, Kamala Harris leads here by 0.6. Very, very close race. Wisconsin is neck and neck. It is a tilt race. This was the tipping point state in both 2020 and 2016. Very well could be the tipping point state in 2024. This is a very, very close state. This one could fundamentally change who wins the election. And in fact, if we look at Pennsylvania, if we switch Pennsylvania to the Democrats, which is the closest state, Democrats actually win here. That goes to show how important Pennsylvania is, how important Wisconsin is. All 7 of the battleground states are very, very important, and this is the final map. 287 for Donald Trump, 251 for Kamala Harris. And yeah, this is the final map. Donald Trump wins here, 287 to 251. Donald Trump would be elected the 47th president of the United States of America. So yeah, if you did enjoy this video, please like and subscribe. We're trying to just get as many subscribers as we can by Election Day, which is tomorrow. So be sure to go vote tomorrow for your candidate, whether it be Donald Trump, Joe Biden, not Joe Biden, I haven't said that in forever, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris or any other third-party candidate. Just make sure you go and vote tomorrow if you have not voted already. Obviously, I cannot vote, but you guys definitely should because I am not old enough. So yeah, I will see you all in the next video. Please like and subscribe, and goodbye.